Hi there, it's Dr. Tina again with Parent Like a Pro. And today I would like to go a bit into empowering you, dear parents. And you know how challenging it can be to raise a child, but think how challenging it can be to raise a special child. So therefore, I am so honored and grateful to have the beautiful Elaine Taylor-Klaus with us, who is co-founder of Impact ADHD, co-creator of the Sanity School, author, mom, and a coach. So Elaine, thank you for being here with us, and I'm so happy to have you.
Truly a pleasure. I'm really excited for this conversation. I think it's great.
Thanks. And could you just for a start tell us something about yourself and about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so bottom line, I am a mom in what we like to call an ADHD plus family of 5. So I'm now a mom of 3 young adult children. My youngest just turned 18.
Mm-hmm.
Very proud of that.
Yeah.
And all of my kids and my husband and myself have been diagnosed with ADHD. As well as anxiety, and several of us also have some learning disabilities on top of that. And there's some other complex issues and health issues. So it's a pretty complicated, we call ourselves a complex family. I like to talk about parenting complex kids.
Amazing. Amazing.
And yeah, so in a nutshell, I do what I do as a coach and as a parent educator because my kids were really complicated when they were first born and I was really lost. And in those days, I didn't know what my challenges were. We knew a little bit about my husband, but I started having these kids that were really difficult to raise and educate, and I didn't know why.
Mm.
And I struggled a lot. The first 10 years of parenting were not fun.
I
Just
can
not.
imagine. I can imagine because I have a 3-year-old, and I know it's pretty fun. But you know, well, so far my daughter doesn't have any of these diagnoses, and I have the feeling that I'm having, and this is really hard to admit right now, that I'm having the most complicated child ever. So tell me, what were your struggles and when did you start noticing that there is maybe something different with your children? Because a lot of parents, when you're having, especially your first child, you're having this beautiful story in your head, how everything is going to be perfect and beautiful, you know, happy family. But then all the struggles and fear and emotions and everything, and of course, you know, the nights without sleep kick in. And then you're having the most complicated child ever. So
Right.
what was your story? What was so even...
The early signs.
Yeah, the early signs.
So when my eldest was, and I am not exaggerating, was 2 weeks old, I knew there was something going on because she started screaming, crying. And, you know, we went through lots of doctors and was it colic or was it stomach or, and there were a bunch of early diagnoses and reflux and whatever, but there was just always something about that kid that was struggling in life. And I don't know how to say it any differently, but there was just always something. And at first it was that, and by 2 years old, she was diagnosed with allergies, like real, like intense allergies. And, you know, there was just like, this was the kid who, at 2 years old in preschool, was struggling with cutting and scissors. And, you know, everybody else is having these lovely preschool conferences with their teachers, and my teachers are worried. So we had already changed schools once by the time she was 4. You know, so there was just something about her that was difficult. She just wasn't tracking with her peers. Like, she was a pretty, mostly happy kid, but she was sort of, I always said she just always marched to the beat of her own drum, you know, and if everybody else was on this playing field, she was over there. There was just always something different, and we couldn't put our fingers on it, but there was always this, like, how do we support this kid? How do we help this kid? What do we need to be doing differently? Because what the traditional parenting advice I was getting from the experts wasn't working. And for a long time, I thought that was my fault and that it was because I was a failure as a parent, right? And it took a long time for me to understand that when your kids are different, you have to approach them differently. and what the gurus, the parenting,
Yeah.
advisors tell you doesn't always work for all kids.
So when was the first time you got the real diagnosis that you knew, exactly what was going on?
Well, I don't think we ever really knew exactly what was going on, if I'm
Okay.
really honest. The
Mm-hmm.
first, I mean, there were medical diagnoses in preschool, and then we finally did a psych ed evaluation, is what it's called here.
Mm-hmm.
So she was about 5 when we were first, by the time that she was diagnosed with anxiety and ADHD, but it was really the attention, the
Mm-hmm.
ADHD that showed up. And this was a long time ago. That kid's almost 25. So
Yeah.
in those days, it wasn't common, and people were still thinking it doesn't really exist and it's not real. And there was a lot of judgment and a lot of shame and a lot of
Of course.
stigma around it.
Mm-hmm.
But she was a young kindergartner, and I was trying to figure out whether to keep her going forward in school or whether I should give her an extra year of preschool or
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten. Um, and so I was trying to get some help to figure it out. And so she was under 6 years old, I remember, which is kind of early because she's not reading and it's hard to do some of the tests, but
Mm-hmm.
she was kind of reading. Um, but she was young. She was
Yeah.
really little, you
Mm.
know.
So
But there was just something going on, and we just knew. And then once we got this first round of diagnoses and started treating it, the next real kicker came at about 8 when we started trying different kinds of management because what we were doing wasn't working. And then there was another change at 10. I think that with complex kids, we hit lots of barriers or milestones or whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
It's not a one-time thing, right? You're constantly trying to understand and figure out. And as they grow and change, you got to figure it out again. And so
Mm.
it was constantly changing.
I can see this is just a blessing. I'm going to tell you why. Because I am a strong advocate of this. Well, it's not my theory, but that we really need to connect to our children and to really understand them. And as
Yeah.
we change, they will change. And of course, they're being reflecting us, reflecting our mindsets and everything. And I really think that being a perfect parent takes constant evaluation of yourself, constant
Yeah.
evaluation what your child needs, and constant connection to your child. And I think this was just in an amazing way. She was just showing you this. And I really tend to see this from this
I
really
agree.
positive perspective.
I couldn't agree more now. I mean, I look back
I
on my life
know.
now
Yeah.
and it all makes sense. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't had that experience and being able to support
Amazing.
parents all over the world in a
Yeah.
way because
Yeah.
she was my greatest teacher for
Yeah.
sure.
And this
And I
is
had a lot
so.
to learn about me and myself and
Mm,
how to be in the world with my kids in
mm,
order to help them become their best selves. Yeah.
amazing.
But it
And
was
this is.
definitely a journey in those early years. Because in those early years, I didn't know what was going on with me either, right? So I didn't understand my own challenges, and I didn't understand um, that it was about me, right? I was
Mm.
still playing a blame game on myself. Yeah.
And what were your challenges exactly? Did you
So
face
I
any
was,
challenges like through your childhood and youth and adulthood, and and you didn't realize that
I
there is
did, but
something?
yeah, I didn't realize it when I was finally diagnosed. So I have 3 kids, and when my third child was about 2, and I realized he had a lot of the same tendencies as his older
Mm,
siblings and was very likely to be diagnosed, and everybody
mm,
else had been diagnosed.
yeah.
I looked at my husband and I thought, okay, he can't be responsible for all of this neurology. So I
Yeah.
went and had myself evaluated.
Mm,
And so I was diagnosed in my 40s with attention issues and learning disabilities.
oh my
And
God.
um, and as soon as I found out, it was like this light bulb went off, and my whole life made sense. And it's not that I had failed in my life or in school. In fact, I was a really high achiever, but
Mm,
I had been really anxious, and
mhm.
I was kind of a neurotic mom, and I was able to look back and see how what the choices I had made and how I had accommodated for myself. Like I majored in something in college that I didn't even like because I didn't
Okay.
have to take tests. right? I knew that I could write papers, but I didn't want to take tests. But I didn't know why I could write papers but not take tests, right?
Amazing.
So I understood that I needed to accommodate for myself, but I just never
Mm.
knew how.
But
Does
it's a
that make
good
sense?
thing. Yeah, but it's a good thing because you managed to listen to yourself, like to your
Yeah,
inner voice. I just don't want to, I know I can write those
yeah.
papers. I don't want to take tests. And this is
On
also so
some level,
profound, you
on
know?
on some level, and I think when we're young and we're sort of growing up and in our early 20s, when I only had myself to take care of, I could sort of manage it and figure out and accommodate it, right? I could get
Mm-hmm.
by. It was when I started having a husband and then kids and all of these other responsibilities and my load kept getting heavier.
Yeah.
That's when I couldn't hack it anymore. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't carry the weight of everything and keep all those balls in the air anymore. I really needed something. I needed more support. And that's when the diagnosis became really helpful, is I was able to understand myself and what was going on with me so that I could manage me so I could effectively help my kids learn to manage themselves. But
Yeah.
it took that progress.
Yeah, and you are just proving again another thing I always say, that it takes a child to raise a parent.
Yes. Oh, I
And
love that. It's
yeah,
so true.
yeah, apparently, I was saying this statement, and then just it was, I think, a month ago, a friend of mine told me, she said, oh, Rudolf Steiner, so he was the
Oh,
founder
I
of
love
Waldorf, he was,
yeah.
that's actually his, in a way, he was saying
There's
this.
a
And I
message.
said, I really think that this is what everything, parenting is all about. Really, evaluating yourself, working on yourself in order to be, the best possible support and role model for your children. And I,
Well, what I love, can I just play on that? Because what I love, one of the things I talk about a lot is that we're actually not raising children. We're raising adults, right? We want to
yeah,
raise young adults. We want to raise them to be independent people. And
exactly.
part of the challenge is that we tend to keep them as children because we don't change how we interact with them. So I
Yeah,
love that sort of interplay of,
yeah,
they're raising us and we're raising them.
yeah. It's just, I'm
Yeah,
having goosebumps right now.
yeah, I
So
love
I
it.
think we are we are just so stepped into profound truth, because I think
Yeah,
this what really, all this beautiful journey is about.
yeah,
But I just want to step a little bit back. You said
yeah,
that, what the, like, the parenting gurus and coaches told you to do with your children or with your daughter didn't work. How
yeah.
did you manage then to understand her? Because I think I think it's a lot of courage and a lot of strength to kind of realize, this is not working. It's not just me. It's not me that I'm doing everything wrong, because I was doing it the way they told me to do, and it's not working. And this really is overcoming yourself, overcoming your mind, really manage your mind to really connect to your child. How did you do that? If you could, in a way, reverse
Great
engineer
question.
what,
Well, I,
how.
there are two answers to that question. One is coaching. Is
Mm-hmm.
I got coaching, and I that's why I became a coach, because it was so profound for me. I got help. I asked for help. I got help. I think I asked for help for a long time before I got help that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of help out there for kids, but there was not a lot of help out there for parents. And that's why I do what I do, because, and why you're doing what you're doing, is because parents really need guidance and
Yes.
support. And so part of it was I learned to ask for help. But the other one is, and this is I haven't told this story in a long time, but a true story. So my oldest child was about, I don't know, 8 or 10, maybe 10 or 12. And I went to see a parenting expert speak, who I was a big fan. She was a woman named Wendy Mogul, and she wrote a book called The Blessings of a Skinned Knee.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful parenting book. One of those books that stands the test of time, right? Really
Mm-hmm.
fabulous. And I was a huge fan. And I was sitting in the middle of the auditorium. I remember this so vividly. And she's all about sort of helping your kids become more independent and letting go and not hovering, and I loved her. But I was upset, and I raised my hand and I said, how does this apply if your kids have special needs? And
Mm-hmm.
she looked at me straight on and she said, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked. I mean, I still remember sitting there, tears, right, streaming down my face. And she said, if your kids are different, this doesn't apply because it's different for them. And it was like this huge wake-up call for me. She gave me permission to figure out how to take what I was learning and adapt it based on what my child needed, not what they told me to do, right? So at Impact ADHD, we teach a concept that I learned from another psychologist when my kids were little, to ask, is it naughty or neurological, right?
Yeah.
And so we treat these kids oftentimes as the parenting that, you know, when they're naughty, you do this, here's the consequence, here's the, when it's neurologically based, you want to deal with it differently and you want to understand. And so when I stopped trying to fit myself into the mold of all of these other typical parents and gave myself permission to really what we call meet my child where she was, my kids, all of them, where they were, and stop trying to put them into a box or trying to put me into a box, when I just stopped and got some coaching to figure out, okay, what do they need and what do they need from me and how do I need to be with them that's different to really empower them to love themselves. That's really what we want, is for them to understand themselves and learn to love themselves, because that's how they're going to be their best self, right? But if we are so busy making them feel wrong all the time, which I was doing and lots of us do, that's not helping them figure out how to be who they are. And that to me is their goal. So I feel like I got this gigantic permission slip from Wendy Mogul. You know, may she rest in peace because she's no longer alive. To really be the parent my kids needed me to be, and stop trying to be the parent that everybody told me I should be.
And this is again another it's so profound, it's so powerful, because even if you don't parent a special child, and for me all of them are special.
All of them are special.
Everyone is
every
special.
Kid's a complex kid on
every
some
kid's
level.
It's a complex kid, and we are all complex. I'm complex as well, you know. And sometimes I don't know, I was joking just the other day. Oh yeah, I have like this special pen. It's not special, but just this kind of, I don't know, pilot like this pen.
Right.
And I can really write really, because I love to write. I really, if I can, I'm gonna write it down. I'm not gonna use my computer or my phone or anything. And I really, if I write it down, I want to look at. I just want it to be nice and beautiful. And the only pen I can really write with, and so it's that pen, and it has to be black.
Right.
So all the nurses where I'm working, in where I'm working, you know, in that place, in that community health center, they all know that I am writing only with black pens and only with one, because this is the only one. And I'm also I'm refilling this, you know, always. I buy this, you know, fillers, and I refill. And
because it works for you.
Because it works for me. And you can buy me any other black pen, I won't be able to write with it. So I always joke, I'm autistic in that way.
Yeah, it's your thing.
It's my thing. And I'm proud of it.
That's what it is. We want to help our kids figure out what it takes for them to be successful and where their strengths are. And it's going to be different for everyone. And that's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay. And really, we need to teach them that being special, even if this is just this pen, this black colored pen, this really is, I'm saying it in really humble way. I'm proud of myself of being that way, of being that special, of standing out like this. And I think this is what our children need. And I always say, even if we are, you know, parenting any child, of course, there are lots of theories, and lots of theories are great because, you know, we have so many children, we have different personalities, you know, in the form of parents. It's good to have all the theories, but take only, and here it is where we are really creating our lives. take from all the theories whatever
Yeah.
it serves you and
That's right.
whatever resonates with you and put it
Exactly.
together, and whatever
Well,
will
and
resonate also.
that's
Yeah,
what I
go
love
on.
about the coach approach, right? So
Yeah,
so the work that we do. So I don't I guess I at this point I probably have a parenting theory, right? After all these years.
of course.
But the notion is that when I met my business partner Diane, she and I had this parallel experience. We had both become coaches
Mm-hmm.
and we realized we'd become better parents. And it wasn't rocket science. It was about communication strategies, and it was about perspective, and it was about setting intentions, and all of these things that we're talking about. So we called this, we sort of took all of these skills and we call it the coach approach,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about helping parents learn skills from the world of coaching to empower their kids to become whoever it is they're becoming, right?
Yeah.
But it's not about here's a strategy for this or like we do have a model and we have strategies and all of that, but really it's much more conceptual. It's much more about thinking about how do we be in relationship, right? Because it's all
Mm,
about empowering someone else to make their choices and figure out what they want for themselves.
amazing.
And that's why I think it's so incredibly impactful, because it's not about, I'm not giving you something to do, but I can give you a skill set and some questions to ask so you can figure out how to make it work in your family. And it's going to be different if you do it, Dr. Tina, than if I do it,
Mm,
Elaine, or
mm,
Jeremy
mm,
does it, or
mm,
Bob does it, or Joe. Like every one of us needs to figure out, how does this work in my family, in my home, at 5 o'clock, at
mhm.
8 o'clock in the morning, when everybody's had no sleep, when everybody, like whatever it is, we have to be able to apply it.
Yeah.
And that's the real magic and the juice of it, right? Is
Mm,
understanding our own approach to parenting well enough to be able to apply it without shame, without judgment, without guilt, right? But with
mm,
a real confidence that I'm creating an environment for these kids that is in everybody's best interest,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Theirs and ours. Yeah,
Mm, yeah. Because in that way, they will be empowered. They will, be raised into self-confident, accountable
right.
adults. And this
Exactly.
is what we really want for them,
Yes.
to be
Yeah.
independent, to really,
Yes.
they have their own heads, their own minds, they can use them, they can think
Yeah.
for themselves. And I think this is so important. But anyhow, you are having so many, now parenting experiences and coaching. What would you say if we are having like a mother or a father who is full of other theories that are not working, and they have this intuition, or just this feeling there is something different about the child, and
Hmm.
the doctors are not saying that, in early development, really sometimes it's difficult to say,
Yes.
to be honest. And
Yeah.
and sometimes, and in some cases, I really um, can say confidently it's okay to wait until we're having like,
Right.
okay, 2 or 3 years of age, and then we can say it more, because some kids, they're having like this special trait, but this is just their personality in a way, and it wouldn't be
Yeah.
fair to really put them into a box and just let
Right.
them be. But how to connect to your child, this is one of my,
Yeah.
the questions people are asking me the most. And some of the parents are doing it just intuitively, and they just are having this gut feeling, and they just know.
Yeah.
Those are mostly the parents who just are also able to listen to their inner voices in themselves. But there are some who are not skilled in that way. So
Yeah.
what would you say, how to know what your child needs? And for those who really are suffering, and they just don't know where to turn to and what to think, and how to offer their child really this support that it needs. So
Yeah.
how to connect, how to understand them.
Hmm. There's so many things coming up for me as you're asking that. It's a complicated question, right?
Yeah.
Everything that we do is about answering that question. Our website, Impact ADHD,
Mm,
training program, Sandy School, it's all about that, right? And I often say to my community, sort of, when all else fails and you don't know what to do, there are two choices. Either practice self-care and take care of yourself as a parent,
Mm.
because when we take care of ourselves, we will be better able to meet our kids where they are,
Mm.
or lean into the relationship, right? So when you don't know what to do, get curious. Don't
Mhm.
try to fix anything. Don't try to
Mhm.
solve the problem. Don't try.
Amazing.
Stop and get curious. Connect, right?
Mhm.
What could be going on with this child? So in our realm, we talk a lot about um, sort of what differentiates these kids from typical kids, and how do we shift our expectations as parents, right?
Mm.
So because developmentally, a lot of these kids are developmentally delayed.
Yeah.
Not that they won't catch up, but that, there are a lot of strategies we teach around it, but we want to shift the expectations to meet the kids where they are developmentally, not
Mm.
where they are chronologically,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
if you get curious and you say, okay, this I clearly something's going on that this child is having a hard time with, following directions, doing what they're asked, whatever
Mm.
it is. First of all, it's not the child won't, but it's the child is struggling to, is having a hard time with. And when we see it with compassion, as they're having a hard time with something, we will meet it differently because that we can help with, right? That we can support. And so part of it is not about taking it personally and making it be about us. How can he speak to me that way? But
Mm.
really going over there and saying, wow, my kid's having a hard time. How can I help? So that's one piece of really connecting in relationship, is really keeping our attention over there and really focusing on where is this child right now, and getting curious about what might be behind the behaviors. What is she or he struggling with, right? We do a lot of
Mm.
work teaching parents about executive function,
Mhm.
so that you understand what the pieces are.
Mm.
Because with young kids, even if there was a diagnosis, what would you do about it? The answer is behavior management,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Mm.
which is what this is all about, is
Mhm.
understanding them, getting really clear on the change you want to see, and getting curious about what are causing the challenges, what's behind them, so that you can do some effective planning and strategizing to address it. But before we go straight to the solution, we have this tendency to want to fix things as parents.
Mhm.
Before we go to solution, I'd say that the most important thing is to step back, look at the big picture, and really get curious about what's going on. I was talking to a client of mine today who's got 3 young kids, under 9, and in 2 weeks has gone from pulling her hair out in the mornings to she cannot believe how fabulous mornings are. And she called today. She said it's just too good to be true.
Mm.
And so I asked, so what's different? Like, right, what do you, because it's not about medication and it's not about
Mhm.
it, like, what's different? And part of what was different was that she began to understand motivation and executive function, and she involved her children with some of the discussions about some of the changes. So she got their ownership and their buy-in. And part of it was she stopped looking at the little things and pulled back a little bit and looked at the big picture,
Mm.
and was really starting to understand the dynamic and what was happening with the kids and with each other. And it was that combination that let her make some pretty minor changes and have a huge result. And it's because she wasn't focused here on fixing a problem. She pulled back here to understand the dynamic. So that's what I would say. At the end of the day, it's about really understanding what's going on,
Mm.
then getting to problem solving. But don't start with problem solving. Start
Yeah.
by getting curious.
Yeah. Oh, I love your idea and love your approach. This is just one of the most wonderful advice I've ever heard, and it is true. It is true. This
Yeah.
is the way to. And as you said, getting the big picture. It doesn't matter if your child is special or not, or it's
Mhm.
just,
No,
I
it works
think
for all
all it
kids.
works for all. And this is so, just I love this conversation because everything is blending together, and it's really,
Mhm.
and everything is connecting. It really is so. And what we really need to see in our children are basically, and then, our children will be, raised in that way to see this in other people.
Yes.
It's just to see how beautiful we all are and how amazing we all are. And this is all of us. We
I
are
have to
all,
tell you. I have to I have to tell you, I just last week was posting something. So one of my kids had a pretty major accomplishment last weekend and got an award. It was a really big deal. And what I was writing about was that at some point when I was young, I realized that the best way to change the world was to raise really conscious children,
Exactly.
to grow up to become conscious adults.
Yeah.
And I'm now standing here 25 years later looking at these three young adults, blown away by who they are and what exceptional people they are. They've all got challenges, and those challenges have made them better and
Mm,
stronger and
mm,
more resilient and more compassionate, and they're each of them in their own right truly incredible young people who are going to do who knows what in the world, right? But all of that is because we as parents decide, how do we want to be with them, and who do we want them to become who
mhm.
we think they should become, or do we want to help these lovely beings become who they're destined to be? And
Exactly.
if we step into that role um, of the sculptor who lets the sculpture come out, instead of having to define who they are, the possibilities are extraordinary,
Yes,
truly
they are.
extraordinary. These
Yeah.
kids are going to be amazing adults. Our job is to help them get there, and I do want to say it's hard.
It
Like,
is.
this is not what we're talking about. This is not easy. It's not rocket science, but it's not easy either. Like, it requires patience and tolerance and understanding and a lot of self-management, right, for
Mhm.
ourselves.
Mm,
And it's the best work you'll ever do in the world, right?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as they become young adults and you begin to have these sort of a different kind of relationship with them, this is why we have kids, right? So we can be in relationship with them forever. They
Yeah.
become these amazing human beings that you get to be in relationship with. And that starts really young with how you be with them and how you connect
Mm,
with them really early.
mm.
Or at any step along the way. So if your kids are
Yeah.
12 or 14 or 17, it's not too late. Okay, it is not too late. It is never too late to reconnect to the relationship you have with your kids.
Yeah. It's never too late. And,
Mhm.
they are being so grateful. It doesn't matter at what age you start, because
Right.
I had, I think it was just a few weeks ago, a conversation with a mother with this terrible teenager.
Mhm.
And when we were having this conversation, everything she was, saying was what's problematic about this child, this teenager. He is this and he's that. He did this. He did that.
Yeah.
But basically, she didn't realize that he has, he was an amazing musician, and
Right.
the way of she was punishing him was, you're not able to
Taking
go
away the
to.
music.
Exactly.
Right.
And everything was then a vicious cycle. And I just kind of said, okay, I know you would like to take all his pain away and you live it yourself. I know you would like to, you don't want him to suffer, but in a way, he needs his own experience, and you
Right.
really need to let him be. We are having, all of us are just these diamonds who are not polished yet. But
Right.
the life will polish us. You just need to be there to support and
Yeah.
let him fly, let him be whatever he is.
Yeah.
In a matter of 10 days,
It
he
shifted.
is, yeah, it shifted.
It's
It
amazing.
shifted. And
So
I'm
the
just like,
question that I often give parents for that scenario when it's just complaint is, what's the dream behind the complaint?
yeah,
So not what, okay, I get all of this is what's going wrong. So what do you want? What's the change you want to see? Because when we can focus on the positive and the vision forward instead of only on what's wrong, and that's what you sort of gave her this place where she could focus on what was possible instead of what wasn't.
yes,
That's when everything shifts.
yeah,
So what's the
exactly.
dream behind the complaint is a great
Yeah.
question for us to ask ourselves.
Yeah. And here we are stepping really into conscious parenting. If we want
Yeah.
to raise conscious children, we really need to be
Yeah.
conscious ourselves. And in a way, we need to drop our ego. We need to
Yeah.
drop our limitations, because she was parenting from the place of limitation, of
And
everything
fear,
being wrong and so on. So
Yep.
really drop that. You
Yep.
really, it doesn't matter what you think he should do. It doesn't matter what you think he should become.
Right.
It really, he needs you just to support him, to support in a way he is, and no different.
Yeah.
And we all wish, we think we know what they need, but in fact it's just, it's different from one person to another. And here we really need to drop our ego, and with that drop our limitations and our wishes. So what's behind it? I just say, just watch him, because he is so amazing, such an amazing child.
Yeah.
And, I was so happy when they came and told me how their relationship changed in a matter of 10 days.
Isn't that amazing?
So how grateful are kids? And it, as you said, it's never too late. It's never too late to just, give them the opportunity to live, to live, what their potential is. And in that way, they will really reach their fullest potential.
Well, and what you're really talking about is changing how we be with them, how we communicate with them, how do we approach them. Diane and I have started using the term ask, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
To step out of that tendency we have when they're little, and you have to direct them when they're little. But if we want them to become independent decision makers and problem solvers, then we have to step back and give them an opportunity to start practicing. And that doesn't mean you throw it all at them at once, but to incrementally start stepping back and letting them step forward. And one of the most powerful ways to do that as a parent is to start asking more questions. Instead of, you should do this, you can shift to, what do you think you might do? Or what options do you see you might have, right? Just opening, changing the dialogue from a statement to a question empowers them to begin to feel part of their own decision making.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just these questions, and they are opening so many possibilities.
That's right.
And sometimes when I am asking, my daughter some things, I am amazed what kind of answers she's just brings about, and what her imagination is just telling her right now. It's just today we were playing, and she was having like this, when they're like it's a square with the letters and numbers in it, and you can put it out. It's just to put it on the floor, and you can put it together. It's like a puzzle.
Like puzzle.
Yeah, like a puzzle. And there was a letter L, and she put it out, and she said, "Oh, look, I'm having a hammer." Said, okay, perfect. So what are we gonna fix? And then we were fixing, we made her out of a paper house, and she's playing in it. And then she was, fixing something, and we were fixing, and it was, and I'm so, fascinated.
It is amazing, isn't it? Those little brains, there's so much going on in there.
Yeah. And the grandmother was visiting, and she said, "Oh, you're having a letter L." She said, "No, that's a hammer." That's a hammer for now. This is a hammer.
Today it's a hammer.
Yeah, today it's a hammer. And I just really wish for all the parents to start really stepping back, as you said, to step back and watch and observe just this pure perfection of a child in front of them, no matter what kind of a child, how special he or she may be. Just to see, because in each and every one of them, there is something special that really stands out.
Yeah.
And really start focusing on that, and really start, focusing them, the children, on that, because they're being so special. Like my pen. I'm so proud of my pen. And I really am. And
so
this is so funny.
Here's what I will say about that. A lot of parents, we do an exercise in one of our programs on finding the strengths, right? We call it taking a strengths-based approach, what you're describing.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents struggle to do that. It's hard when you've got a really complex kid and you're constantly redirecting all day. So I do want to say that if you're having trouble finding that magic and that gift, because it is there, but sometimes it's hard to see, right? You can look for the strength in the challenges. So a really stubborn child is a very determined child, right? A child who argues all the time may be a really good negotiator. If you're having trouble, and we hear this from parents a lot, like there's nothing because they're so frustrated, right? If you feel like they're just, if you're having trouble finding their strengths, look to their challenges, because everybody's greatest challenge is also our greatest strength, and vice versa. Our greatest
Yeah.
strength is also usually a liability, right?
Amazing.
We
Yeah.
can be caring, but we can give ourselves away,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I would say look to their challenges to find their strengths, and also look at the things we don't typically see. Like, is this a child that's particularly sweet with animals or with little children? Or, look at how they're relating to others,
Mm,
not
mm,
just in the normal,
mm.
day-to-day things that we ask them to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So other ways to
Exactly.
find your strengths, because sometimes it can be daunting for
Yeah,
some.
it can be because, and you're stressed, and I understand them, because they're just
Yeah.
focusing and they're tired and everything, exhausted of
Yeah.
everything. They just
Yeah.
want to help, but they just don't know how.
Burnt out.
And
Right.
burned out.
And
That's the
that's where
word.
the self-care comes in, right? That's why
Mm,
we circle back to, if you don't know what to do and things aren't going well,
yeah,
figure out how to take care of yourself.
yeah.
Because the rubber band can only get stretched so
So
thin. It's only
yeah,
gonna break, right? You gotta release the tension sometimes so that it can keep working.
yeah, exactly. And I just want to say that for me, all the children that are being ADHD, ADD, autistic, for me, they are so special. And I approach them, and I really feel that way, that they are being more evolved than we are, and we are just trying to put them into a box they don't fit. And it's wrong to put them in a box. We really need to shift our perspective and look at them from the other way. And of course, with our limited brain potential, we won't understand, but just let them teach us. And I think they really are so special and really, here to teach us something, and that they really are more evolved. And if we are just step back and watch them in that way, I think we
And
will
help
learn a
them
lot. And
harness it, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm with you 1,000%. And what I would add to it is they need our help to learn to manage it,
yeah,
because we don't want them to be off on another plane and really not be able to function in the
yeah,
world.
yeah,
So there's this balance between letting them be their brilliant, creative, quirky
exactly.
selves, and giving them enough support or structure or whatever it is to help them learn to manage themselves
Yeah,
in this world. And it's going to take longer with these kids, and that's okay,
yeah,
right?
and that's okay.
That's just okay, because if they learn to self-manage, that's when they will, like, really, really reach for the stars.
And they will, and they
And
will, they
it's
will.
amazing what they can
Yeah,
do.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And just let them be, take your time, let them, have their own time, and, progress on their
Yeah.
own, just, pace,
Yeah.
because this is what they really need. And if you would have your brain so filled with information, of course, maybe you wouldn't have as many motoric skills at that moment. And we really
Yeah,
need
there's a
to,
lot going on in those brains, that's
yeah.
for sure.
And I
Yeah.
think as as a doctor, I tend to look at them that way. Okay, motorically, we are having some lack of motoric skills right now. But if we would just understand all these things that are going on, this
Yeah.
brain cannot manage to,
Anything else right now?
yeah.
This brain is on overdrive.
Yes, it
Right.
is. And if we would force this child to do this, to acquire motoric skills at that moment, we would literally, burn it out. So
Yeah.
we really need to step back and just, be amazed how, they are fascinating, in all other fields, because they are, even from
Yeah.
the start. And I think this is a message we all need
Yeah.
to realize. Elaine, this was such a powerful,
Thank you. I enjoyed
profound
it so
conversation.
much.
I enjoyed it so much. Just before we go, you prepared a little something for our
Yeah.
viewers out there. What is
Yes.
it?
So it's I did some thinking to figure out what was the right fit. So what I came up with is an ebook that we wrote. It's actually a few years old now. It's one of the first things we wrote, and I went back to rewrite it a few years ago, and I didn't really change much, because it's every bit as important now as it was then. And it's called ADHD in Reality: Practical Tips for Parents from Parents. And so it's an ebook that's going to go through the basic things that, if you think your child might have attention issues,
Mm-hmm.
this is what it might look like, and here's how it might show up. because it
Mm-hmm.
looks very different for all these different kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then it talks about executive function. So it's a really good, simple primer, like an easy read, really quick, easy read, sort of here are the basics in a nutshell about ADHD and executive function. And I think if parents out there are not sure or want to understand it better, this is a really good, simple, but comprehensive way, if that makes sense, to get started. And if you love what you see there, I really invite your parents to join us on Impact ADHD. It's a free website, a free resource for parents. Lots and lots of great articles and tips and guest experts, and really helping you learn about this coach approach to parenting complex kids. So start with the ADHD in Reality ebook, which, as I say, I think
Amazing.
it's pretty straightforward and really helpful.
Yeah, it is. I love your gift. I really do.
Thank you.
So thank you once again.
You're
It was
welcome.
a
Thanks for
pleasure,
having me.
really, really a pleasure. And thank you, all of you, dear parents, ladies and gentlemen, who are following this series. Thank you for watching us. I hope this interview was so incredible for you as it was for me. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.